So the purpose of this video is to talk about research, and specifically what should go into a research document prepared for submission at the university. Now, our goal is to create a document that is clear, informative, written in an appealing style, and I should probably add an academic style, because we want it to feel encyclopedic or feel academic. The purpose is to engage in academic writing. It should be broken down into clear sections with clear headings. It should be concise, not verbose. It should be properly sourced and cited, and it should be completely free of spelling and grammar mistakes. So, how do we get the style right? I suggest that you have a look at Wikipedia. In fact, just check out any Wikipedia article, because Wikipedia, because it's an encyclopedia, it has to follow certain academic rules. So let's take a look at a Wikipedia page. Here's a page called Follow Through and Overlapping Action. This is actually a page that I created. It's one of the principles of animation. And I've edited quite a few Wikipedia pages, and in the course of doing it, I've actually pretty much self-taught myself to write in an academic style. And pretty much all Wikipedia pages begin with this formula. There's a short paragraph at the beginning that describes the subject. In this case, it's overlapping action. Then there's a content section that's actually generated automatically by Wikipedia. Then there'll be some kind of a definition or introduction to the subject, and then a more extensive discussion of the subject with clear headings underneath. At the end, there will be a bibliography. Then there will be a references section, probably a section for notes, for inline citations, and then finally at the end, external links, which would be links to external websites and so on. So, research and development. What is the difference between research and development? I suggest that they are two clearly different things. This is a picture of the library at Bucks. To all of our students at Bucks, I suggest very strongly that you do go and check out the animation books. We have, as a university, a bias towards books and away from websites. And the reason is that books have to go through a kind of filtering process in order to get published. They will be edited, they will be proofread, they will be checked for facts, they will be indexed. All sorts of things go into a book which make it ultimately more of a useful academic resource than just finding stuff online. There is plenty of amazing work out there on the internet, but it is not always reliable. So, get thee to the library, and when you're in the library, you can either look things up through the catalogue, or you can just flip through the shelves and look at the animation book. Consider the work of other artists and authors when you're doing your research. Make notes, and always take page references. If you want to use any imagery that's in the books, I suggest not taking pictures of it with your phone, because you'll get quite a grainy image. I suggest using the scanners to scan images. And we are allowed to scan a limited number of images from books under the fair use exception to the copyright laws. When you are reading a book, the thing that is most important is the name of the book, that is the title of the book, the name of the author, the page you're looking at, the publisher who published the book, and also the date of publication. You need all of that information in there. Now, if you're going to include links from YouTube, which is fine, make sure that you take a screen grab of something in the video. Otherwise, if you just have a link to something at YouTube, it means that the reader then has to actually go and watch that link. And that is something that takes time, takes them away from the document, and they might not do it. If you just have a screen grab in there, then the reader can see at a glance the thing it is that you are referring to. A picture tells 1,000 words. Okay, so separate from research is development. Here's where you start to develop your own ideas. You do your storyboards, your sketches, your thumbnails, visual development. These are some thumbnails that I did for a short animation project. Now, why do you want to do this? Because it shows your thinking. It shows that you are actually you didn't just come up with something, you didn't just take something out of the top of your head, you actually sat down and thought about it. Now, you do not need to do brilliant drawings. I suggest that these drawings you're looking at now are not brilliant drawings. They're okay. The point is they are clear. And if you're doing storyboards and sketches and thumbnails, you are thinking about what you're doing and you're making choices, and that's what you want to show. When you do include scanned artwork, do try and clean them up in Photoshop. If you don't know how to do that, watch an online tutorial. It is quite straightforward. You can adjust the levels, the color balance, the saturation, and so on. It won't take you long to learn it, and having clear, attractive, and appealing images in your document is a big advantage. Suggested headings in your research document. I would start by stating the brief. What is it that you're being asked to do? Then talk about the research that you've done, and then talk about the development. And try and keep these things as separate as you can. I know that as a matter of practice, often research and development tend to go together, but try and separate them out into clear, separate headings so that the reader looks at the research you've done and then the development of your own ideas. At the end, you'll have a bibliography section, a references section, and a section for external links, or something along those lines. Does design matter? Do fonts matter? I suggest that fonts do matter a lot. We are creating documents which could be used for presentation. It could be a client pitch. You could be trying to win business. And we're in the visual arts game. So we are in the business of making stuff look nice. Try and avoid really crap fonts. Stuff like Comic Sans or Courier, they just don't look very nice. There are better fonts out there. Helvetica, which you're looking at, is an attractive font. Times Roman is a good font. Verdana is a good font. Arial is a good font. There are lots of good fonts out there. You want to keep half an eye on the design. Here's an example from one of our first year students, Akshay Ohari, who did a very nicely presented document. And you can see that this is only a section of the document, but you can see here that everything is very clearly labeled. He's got a title at the top with a blue background. You can see we've also got research and development underlined and then broken down into sections. Research, initial idea. It's very, very clear reading this what is going through Akshay's head. And clarity is tremendously important when you're taking a reader through your thought process. So, imagine that you're submitting your document to a client for a presentation. Make it look pretty. Now, let's consider let's consider the style in which you're writing. Because what you're essentially writing is, has some of the elements of a report, the tendency is to use the word I a lot, and it makes it sound a bit too much like your account of your school holidays. So consider these two sentences. I found some videos on walk cycles at YouTube which I really liked. Let's try and rewrite that in a more academic style. A number of relevant examples of walk cycles can be found at YouTube. That essentially says the same thing, it's just we're doing it in a slightly more academic, slightly more authoritative style, and a bit less first person, a bit less I like this and I like that. And just trying to write in a style that is more in keeping with the academic requirements of a university. So this takes us on to Harvard referencing. This is one of the most important things we have to talk about. Harvard referencing is really a kind of parenthetical referencing, which is a citation style in which partial citations, for example, Smith, 2010, page 1, are enclosed within parentheses, that's brackets to you and me, and embedded in the text, either within or after a sentence. And then at the end, you'll have an alphabetized list of your citations in references or works cited or a bibliography. The key point is that you are referencing your material. So if you make a statement, you put in brackets Smith, that's the name of the guy who wrote the book you're referring to, 2010, that's the date of it, page 1. And then at the end, there's a full citation of that book. So, for example, let's think about this. Edward Muybridge. Some people say Edward Muybridge was the first person to film a horse at a trot. What is wrong with this? Well, what is wrong with this is who says it? Who are these people? When did they say it? It's not clear. It's not academic. You want to be as precise as possible. So here is an alternative way of saying the same thing, but better. By 1878, spurred on by Stanford to expand the experiments, Muybridge had successfully photographed a horse at a trot. So now you're making an authoritative statement. We know the time, we know what was happening, and we know who made this statement. It was Williams at page 2. And if we go to the end of your document, we will find under the bibliography or the end references section or whatever you want to call it, Williams is always the last name first, comma, Alan Larson, brackets, 1992, and then the title of the book, Republic of Images, A History of French Filmmaking, and then finally the publisher. Now the reason this is so important is that I, as a reader, can go into that and I can go and look up that book. I can find it on the shelf because I know the name of the author, the date of the publication, the title of it, and the publishing company that published it. And I've got the page reference. The date of the publication is important because there might be a number of different editions of that book. And the different editions will have different numbers of pages, and therefore the page reference will be different. So all of this information is vital if I want to check that reference. Now I may never check it, but at least I know that you've gone to the trouble of allowing me to check it, which makes me think about, which makes me appreciate that you have thought about what has gone into your research document, and you're clear about who your sources are and how you've cited them. So here's a bibliography from the Wikipedia page that I showed you earlier on. And what should go into a bibliography? I would suggest it is only books. Nothing else goes into a bibliography other than books. It comes from the Greek word biblos, meaning books. I think. I haven't checked that. I hope that's correct. If it isn't, send me an email. Tell me to get it right next time. So in a bibliography, only books. Now how do you cite books? Let's take The Illusion of Life. The Illusion of Life by Frank and Ollie, published by Bloomsbury in 1953. Pages 101 to 153 are useful. Is this correct? Clearly not. This is not the right way to cite books. This is the correct way to cite books. Johnston, last name first, comma, Ollie, and Thomas. Thomas comes after Johnston because in the alphabet J comes before T. Frank, now the title of the book, The Illusion of Life, which you can put in italics if you like. Abbeville Press, now I know the publisher. New York, we might not need to include that, but you could do. Brackets, 1981. So that's the date. That is a correctly cited book. Here's another example. Williams, comma, Richard, 2005. Remember there are a number of editions of the Animator's Survival Kit. It's important to cite the one that you are referring to. The Animator's Survival Kit, again in italics if you like. London, Faber and Faber. Same thing. What about journals? Same deal. Here's Animation Magazine, Maynard Smith, comma, John, last name first, 2012, Her Brave Moment, that's the title of the article, Animation Magazine, edition number 33, and now the pages. Same thing with a newspaper, exactly the same deal. Now, last of all, or almost last of all, spell check and grammar check. You'd be surprised how many people don't do this. You will automatically lose marks if you don't check your spelling and your grammar. Some things are not always spelled correctly. Well, here, Microsoft Word, which is a very handy little piece of software, will tell us for free that this word is not correctly spelled because it's underlined in red. So we know we can change that. And oftentimes the grammar is not making a lot of sense in point of fact. Microsoft Word has also helpfully underlined this in green to saying that it does not like the grammar in this sentence, and it's right not to like it because it's terrible. Consider this sentence. Thumbnail sketches are mainly used for planning animation. Will a spell check pick this up? And the answer, of course, is no. The spell checker is not going to underline manly because that is a word. Manly is a word. It's not just not being used correctly in this context. So even when you've run a spell check, you still, unfortunately, need to proofread your work because there may be mistakes like this, which a spell check will not pick up. The grammar check might pick it up, but at the same time, it might not. So, in conclusion, a good research document has clear headings. It separates your thoughts clearly out into different sections. It's encyclopedic. It's written in an academic style and not in a casual or conversational style. Try to avoid, if you can, the first person. Try to avoid saying I too much. You don't need to avoid it completely. You can say I, it's fine. But just try and find ways of making it less just your opinion and more a process of sifting through the opinions of others and then reaching a conclusion. Because in a sense, that's what academic writing is. It's all about your sources and citing your sources. Inline citations. So that's the Harvard referencing we talked about, so that every time you make a statement of fact, you cite it. Who said it? when, in what book. At the end, you have your bibliography, where you really get to grips with, well, you just really have a list of all the books that you're relying on, all the books that you've looked at, and if you like, a list of references or external links. And that's it. And if you follow those rules, you should find that your marks go way up very quickly.